Hello, and welcome to this dialogue on the recently launched IPBES assessment on invasive alien species and their control. My name is Pemo Khomotso. I am with UNDP's Nature Hub. During this session, we'll look at the importance of bridging knowledge and action for biodiversity conservation. First, I'd like to introduce our guest speakers. We have Ms. Francine Pickup, who's the Deputy Director of UNDP's Bureau for Policy and Program Support. And we have Dr. N. Lahigoderi from IPBES. She's the Executive Secretary. IPBES is the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, and they will both provide us with keynote remarks. We'll then have a dialogue session with Professor Helen Roy, who co-chaired the thematic assessment on invasive alien species. She's based at the UK Centre for Ecology and Hydrology. We'll also have Dr. Ilgin Akpinar from the General Directorate of Nature Conservation and National Parks at the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry in Turkey. We will conclude our dialogue with remarks by Midori Paxton, the Director of Nature Hub at UNDP. So without much ado, I'll pass the virtual microphone over to Francine to get us started. Welcome and enjoy. Thank you.
Greetings to our esteemed speakers, partners and colleagues tuning in from around the globe. We are at a critical juncture where the delicate balance of nature is increasingly under threat, largely due to human activity. Invasive alien species introduced by humans intentionally or accidentally are one of the main drivers of biodiversity loss, disrupting ecosystems and affecting economies, food security, and health globally. The call for transformative evidence-based solutions is clear and is urgent. IPBES is our invaluable ally in this journey. Its role in strengthening the knowledge foundation and fostering evidence-informed policymaking is pivotal in guiding UNDP's Nature Pledge implementation in support of governments and national stakeholders. The recently launched assessment on invasive alien species provides renewed impetus for efforts ongoing at the national level. Our discussion today underscores the profound connection between informed actions and the global biodiversity framework. Scientific, indigenous, and local knowledge all serve as essential drivers to catalyze creative decisions and innovative actions that help mitigate the threats of invasive alien species, restore the resilience and health of our ecosystems, and attain the ambitious 2030 targets of the SDGs. As we dive into the dialogue, let's remember that our collective wisdom, our unity and our commitment are key to safeguarding our planet's biodiversity and ensuring a harmonious coexistence with nature for generations to come.
Thanks very much, Francine. Indeed, we cannot understate the importance of collaborative, evidence-backed approaches in addressing the challenges posed by invasive alien species. Now, I would like to invite Dr. N. Lahigoderi, the Executive Secretary of IPBES, to give her own remarks. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your kind words to IPBES and for hosting this dialogue today, which is dedicated to the important topic of invasive alien species. But before we get into that, I'll just say a few quick words about IPBES itself. So, as most of you will know, IPBES was founded about 10 years ago. It is an independent intergovernmental mechanism which currently counts 144 governments as its members. And in terms of overall objective, the objective of IPBES is to provide policymakers with credible scientific assessments about the state of knowledge regarding the planet's biodiversity and the many contributions it provides to people, as well as to provide tools and methods to protect and sustainably use these vital assets. IPBES is currently implementing what we call the rolling work program up to 2030. And currently, we are working on the preparation of 3 assessments the Nexus assessment, which looks at synergies and trade-offs between reaching the Sustainable Development Goals related to food, water, health, biodiversity, and climate change/energy. Second topic is transformative change. And the third topic is business and biodiversity. That one focuses on methods, and its goals is to accompany the efforts of the private sector towards decreasing its impact and better monitoring and understanding its dependency towards nature. So the invasive alien species assessment was the last report in the first work program of IPBES, which saw the production of 10 reports, so 11 total with the invasive alien species assessment, including in 2019 the IPBES Global Assessment of Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, the first global assessment of IPBES and its landmark reports. So in terms of impact, the work of IPBES, of course, is now informing many new pieces of legislations around the world, many initiatives by governments, by the private sector, such as the World Economic Forum, for example, or civil society. And IPBES has importantly and recently been providing the scientific basis for the global biodiversity framework, recently approved by COP15, with the important connection between the framework in particular and the conceptual framework of IPBES, the nature contributions to people, the 5 direct drivers, the indirect drivers, and also some of the targets directly taken and drawn from the work of IPBES, such as, for example, the target on the many values of biodiversity. So just a couple of words on the invasive alien species assessment itself before the co-chairs actually start presenting the findings of this assessment. So why a report on this topic? Well, one of the key conclusions of the global assessment that came out in 2019 was that invasive alien species are one of the 5 direct causes of biodiversity loss. There was a large body of scientific evidence on this issue, showing the negative impact of invasive alien species, in particular on our economies, but on many other contributions as well. And until now, there had not been a critical global synthesis on that topic. That is why the 140 plus governments who are members of IPBES asked IPBES to assess knowledge on this topic. So how was this report prepared? Well, the report was produced according to the IPBES rules of procedure, which in particular warrant quality and transparency regarding the selection of authors, the geographical balance, the peer review of drafts, the approval of the reports, etc. It was prepared by a group of about 90 scientists, natural scientists, social scientists, who were themselves supported by 200 contributing authors from all regions of the world. Together, they analyzed over 13,000 scientific references, 13,000 scientific, as well as indigenous and local knowledge. Since, as you well know, IPBES has an approach to working with indigenous and local knowledge systems. The assessment has a summary for policymakers, which was approved word by word at the IPBES 10 plenary, which just took place in August-September in Bonn, 2023, as well as 6 chapters which were accepted by this plenary. So this is to really provide some contexts for the presentations that are going to be made now, including by the co-chairs of the invasive alien species assessment on the key findings of that assessment. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you for those insights, Dr. Larigauderie, and for shedding light on the pivotal role of IPBES in informing action on biodiversity conservation. Now we'll transition into our dialogue session with Professor Helen Roy and Dr. Ilgin Akpinar. We'll first do a deep dive into the IPBES invasive species assessment itself and discuss some of the key findings and actionable evidence that it has generated. I'll turn to you first. Professor Roy, could you please highlight some of the key findings from this assessment? Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question. There are many key findings from our report that really do add considerable insights on the problem of invasive alien species, and particularly their threats to biodiversity and ecosystems, but also the threat that they pose to good quality of life and nature's contributions to people. And I just thought it might be useful to highlight with a few slides the extent of the problem. So we know that there have been 37,000 established alien species introduced by human activities worldwide. And we know that this is growing annually by about 200 new alien species every year. And of all of those, we have evidence of documented impacts for about 3,500 of those alien species, which are therefore considered to be invasive alien species. And they have negative impacts on nature, but also on people. And it's also important to note the number of invasive alien species have been found on the lands of indigenous peoples across all regions of Earth. And that's about 2,300. And you can see from this infographic that there are some cases, some of the invasive alien species are just impacting one kind of category. For example, the chytrid fungus having a profound effect on nature in terms of causing extinctions of amphibians globally. But there are many cases where these invasive alien species are impacting nature and good quality of life and nature's contributions to people. And I think that one of the other key findings from our report, so not only is it the fact that invasive alien species are a major and growing threat to nature and to people, but also that current policies so far have been insufficient in managing biological invasions and preventing and controlling invasive alien species. And we noted that although many countries have targets for the management of biological invasions within national biodiversity strategies and action plans, about 83% of countries do not have national legislation or regulations directed specifically towards prevention and control of invasive alien species. And half of the countries, or about half, 45%, do not invest in the management of invasive alien species. And I think what's really also important to consider is that this growing threat of invasive alien species is going to be exacerbated by the interactions with other drivers of biodiversity change. So the interactions with climate change and land and sea use change, for example. And we only have to think back to the really terrible fires that we saw in Hawaii to see the ways in which that can play out, with the alien grasses really being the fuel to those fires, which were being also driven by climate change.
Thank you, Professor Roy, for sharing those statistics and figures. They show the extent of the problem that we're dealing with. And thank you also for reminding us that the issue is actually quite complex, and it's exacerbated by interactions that are driving biodiversity change and loss globally. Now, turning to you, Dr. Akpinar, could you please share with us how the issue of invasive alien species is dealt with and recognized in your country, Turkey, where I happen to live? What kind of initiatives have been undertaken by the government to counteract this problem? And how do these initiatives reflect Turkey's own commitment to biodiversity conservation?
Thank you for the questions. Invasive alien species are considered one of the leading causes of the biodiversity loss in our country as in the world. Through their multiple impacts, they threaten native species, natural habitats, and ecosystem services, but also economic activities and human health. and it has been determined by many scientific research and monitoring studies conducted in our country. In Turkey, examples of the invasions are numerous. Pufferfish and lionfish in Mediterranean Sea, North Atlantic starfish in Marmara Sea, water hyacinth in Mediterranean region, red-eared sea lider in Mediterranean region, and Aegean regions. In Turkey, there are approximately 900 species in the studies report prepared within the scope of the IPA2 projects. 10 years before these studies, our country started recognitions and awareness activities regarding invasive alien species. The existence of these species has been primarily proven by conducting short-term inventory studies in our protected areas by national resources. Since the rate of the emergence of the new species is increasing for all biological groups, larger comprehensive studies are so required. It was decided to benefit from both national and international resources for these studies, and project applications were made to global environmental facilities and European Union authorities. These projects were started in the IPA2 period. The name of the project, Addressing of Invasive Alien Species Threats in Terrestrial and Inland Waters in Turkey, and the GEF6 period project name, Addressing Invasive Alien Species Threats at Key Marine Biodiversity Areas. In addition, harvest indicative programs and support policies are carried out by different general directorates in our country. Across the country, many actors are mobilizing to organize surveillance, assess impacts, improve knowledge, define strategies, and implement prevention and management actions in the field. In parallel, public policies are developed at national and international level to try to respond to this phenomenon. Thank you for the listening.
Thank you, Dr. Akpina, for outlining the nature of this challenge in Turkey and the actions your government is taking together with other partners to address this pressing challenge. Now, let's shift our focus a bit to look at how evidence can drive policy change and inform action on the ground. Professor Roy, starting with you, considering the threats invasive alien species pose to nature, people, and their livelihoods, and to economies, how can we expedite the translation of scientific evidence into actionable, effective policies, ensuring that there is a balance between ecological integrity on one hand and economic development on the other? Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. It's been an incredible privilege to work with the amazing team of experts to deliver this assessment. And we have compiled a huge amount of evidence to present the problem and outline the problem of invasive alien species, but also to give lots of information around the solutions. And we have really been solution focused throughout the assessment. And when I'm thinking about the ways in which this information can be put to best use, it is really important that it is effectively communicated to people. And we've produced a number of fact sheets that we hope will help in that regard. But I think also within the detail of both the summary for policymakers, but also throughout the assessment, we do provide very detailed guidance as to potential options for delivering action. And one of the aspects we brought together considerations of the ways in which the evidence that we have synthesized could be used is through the strategic actions to achieve integrated governance of biological invasions. And here on this tree that you can see, it's one of the graphics that we present in the summary for policymakers. And we sort of show within the roots the properties of governance systems, robust institutions, responsive governance, effective implementation, equitable and inclusive governance. But also we provide at the top some clear actions that could be implemented to achieve integrated governance. So enhanced coordination and collaboration across international and regional mechanisms, developing and adopting effective and achievable national implementation strategies, sharing effort and commitment, and understanding the roles of everyone who's involved, improving policy coherence, engaging broadly across stakeholders, Indigenous peoples and local communities, having sufficient resources and innovations and research and technology, and supporting information systems, infrastructures, and data sharing. And I think that all of these actions kind of go in hand with very strong communication strategies to be able to ensure that we can deliver achievable action and ambitious progress in managing biological invasions, while still, of course, supporting initiatives that are so important within global trade, for example. And we really feel that this assessment could be extremely helpful in helping governments to underpin and document the progress made towards achieving the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework Target 6.
Thank you, Professor Roy and the whole team, for including such clear and detailed recommendations from this assessment, and for providing guidance on possible solutions we can take. This will be crucial for translating knowledge into action. Now back to you, Dr. Akpina. From the perspective of a government, how critical is the role of platforms like IPBES in generating new knowledge and evidence that can inform and guide on-the-ground action? For instance, how is this recent assessment by IPBES influencing or going to influence Turkey's approach to managing invasive alien species, especially in key areas for biodiversity like marine ecosystems? Thank you.
Thank you for the questions. Since it is the establishment, the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services has been playing a crucial role for United Nations countries in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and Conference of the Parties and the Convention of Biological Diversity, with the evaluation reports containing different themes. In addition, it is seen that the data included in these evaluation reports make a serious contribution to the Aichi targets, and this importance was expressed by our delegates at the different biodiversity conferences in the United Nations. The fact that in the last IPBES assessment was about invasive alien species has once again relieved how serious and important a problem in this issue can become. In our country, ongoing activities related to protection from invasive alien species are carried out in the pilot regions where important marine biological biodiversity is located. The latest evaluations will make a significant contribution to the area-based management plans of invasive alien species to be made in the new period. Due to the importance of this thematic evolution, the report was translated into Turkish and distributed private and public institutions and organizations related to the invasive alien species. Thank you for the listening.
Thank you, Dr. Akpina. It is encouraging to hear how Turkey is leveraging this critical knowledge that IPBES is providing. It's a reminder for all of us of the importance of evidence-based policymaking and collaborative action, including at the global level. Now, as we approach the end of this insightful dialogue, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to our distinguished speakers for sharing their invaluable knowledge and expertise with us today. And before we conclude, it's my honor to introduce my colleague, the custodian of UNDP's Nature Pledge, the person that's currently leading UNDP's efforts to protect biodiversity and ecosystems. Please join me in welcoming Midori Paxton, the director of the Nature Hub at UNDP. Midori, over to you. The floor is yours. Thank you, everyone.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear partners and colleagues, I would like to extend my gratitude to our speakers for their time and valuable insights shared today. Our dialogue emphasized the urgent need to bridge knowledge and action to minimize and mitigate the negative impacts of invasive alien species on biodiversity, as called for by the Global Biodiversity Framework, particularly Target 6. Our speakers highlighted the importance of evidence-based solutions and the crucial role of IPBES in guiding us in these efforts. As we conclude, let's carry forward the knowledge and inspiration gained today. Our collective wisdom and unity are vital in safeguarding the planet's biodiversity. We should aim to foster collaboration, leverage diverse knowledge systems, and drive innovative actions to protect our planet. The road ahead may be challenging, but it is a journey we must take for ourselves and for future generations. Thank you so much for your dedication to nature. I look forward to our continued collaboration in protecting nature and its essential values to humanity. Thank you.